As we should know by now, there are no areas of the brain that actually specialize in reading. Reading is probably one of the most difficult tasks we can ask the brain to do. So when we're learning to read successfully, it actually requires 3 neural systems and specific skills that are all going to work together to help the brain decode symbols into language. So first, the visual processing system is what scans the words and then moves them to the visual cortex in the occipital lobes. These word signals are then decoded on the left side of the brain in an area that we call the angular gyrus. From there, the auditory processing system sounds out the phonemes in the head. And then last, the Broca's and Wernicke's area provide information about the words, and then the frontal lobe processes all this information in order for the learner to provide meaning and sense to what they're reading. But for all of these neural systems to yield successful reading, the learner has to possess certain skills. So first, the learner has to be phonologically and phonemically aware. This means that they recognize that oral language is separated into smaller components. They need to recognize that words are made up of individual sounds. The learner must also understand the alphabetic principle and phonics. This means that the learner is able to understand that spoken words are made up of phonemes, and that phonics helps the learner build on the alphabetic principle. So those two kind of build on one another. And then readers must also build a strong vocabulary to recognize the words in print. This is accomplished when students include vocabulary in conversation, when they listen to adults read to them, and reading on their own. Students must also develop fluency. This is a key factor in contributing to learn how to read. Children who lack fluency will often read stories or passages in chunks, or they'll read very slow, which can make it really difficult for them to comprehend what they're reading if they're reading in chunks and taking forever to read what they're reading. And the only way to build fluency is to practice. The last thing is learning to comprehend written text is also a skill that's important when learning to read. So this comes hand in hand with fluency. Once they build fluency, comprehension often follows. So they must be able to identify words by using the knowledge of outside of the text and access word meaning. They must also be able to monitor themselves in order to determine if the text is making sense and if they need to go back and reread. Once the learners build a strong fluency, like I said, comprehension comes more easily. So the reading system that I looked into was the Fontes and Pinnell Level Literacy Intervention, which was published by Heinemann Publishing. The district I currently work in actually uses this system. So it's a short-term intervention that provides daily and intensive small group instruction to supplement the classroom literacy teaching. This system actually uses leveled books that are developed for struggling readers to help them become successful. Each book comes with a lesson plan that also includes mini phonics lessons that stresses the importance of specific phonics skills that are needed to read the story. So I think that's important because the most basic skill a learner must have in order to read is to be phonologically and phonemically aware. So I think it's good to have these mini lessons. It also includes a quick overview of the vocabulary in the higher level books in order to understand reading. And then it also suggests a mock read where students mock the teacher reading in order to build their fluency. It also includes pictures in the book that are relevant to what the learner's reading so that they have a visual component to influence comprehension. I am very familiar with this system because I use it every day with students that I see for consultant services and literacy intervention. So I use these lessons every day. I really like that it's a quick-paced system, yet it still hits all the major components needed in order for the brain to learn how to read. And then after comparing the system to my findings in the reading on how the brain learns to read, I was actually very pleased and surprised to see that these lessons and leveled books include practice of all the skills really that are needed in order for the brain to learn how to read. So I think that this is a great system that is used by our district, and I hope that it's used in many others.